The Milsim genre of FPS games is really in a hot spot right now. ARMA Reforger is currently blowing up on all platforms. The World War II shooters are also doing great, and tons of other projects are offering different ways to experience large military conflicts in their own unique ways. Today, I want to dive into some of the most popular military FPS on the market right now and talk about why each one of them is good in its own way. So recently, ARMA Reforger got a big update and it launched on PlayStation 5. I dove back in and was yet again floored by how much fun this game is. Right now, Reforger comes in two flavors, vanilla and modded. Vanilla offers a pretty consistent experience, but it's still deep and engaging. It's set during the Cold War, so all of the vehicles, weapons, and soldier gear are from that era. The maps are lush countrysides with small towns and villages sprinkled around them with military bases and other strategic points to capture. The modes are fairly straightforward, but they utilize a lot of teamwork to capture objectives and defend those locations as well. In my most recent time with the game, I had a match where I spent a good chunk of it trying to secure a certain enemy base with my team, and the tactics that emerged were really cool. We had to wait for daybreak so that we could actually see the enemies to perform an effective attack, and I've never actually had a we strike at dawn moment in a game that made sense before, and it was actually pretty cool. Now, mods build on this platform by offering different eras of conflict like modern day combat, plus a slew of custom modes and even remixed maps. You can find servers with modern weapons and vehicles, survival servers, role-playing experiences, and frankly a whole lot more. And one of the big highlights here is that the mods work on both PC and Xbox, and hopefully in the near future for PlayStation. This is a pretty big deal because usually console players don't get to experience all the extra modded content, which is a pretty big part of a lot of these Milsim games. Now, it does feel a bit silly to mention Reforger without talking about ARMA 3, the granddaddy of Milsims. It's basically ARMA Reforger's older, wiser, and bigger brother. It has a staggering amount of downloadable content, a mod community with years of experience behind it, and it continues to be inarguably one of the biggest and most popular Milsim games ever made. That said, it's certainly showing its age, and it wasn't built with accessibility in mind. In ARMA 3, you literally need a full keyboard with a numpad just to support all the key bindings for it. It's incredible what you can do once you're all up to speed on what all the buttons do, but a lot of players will never get there due to the initial time investment. And looking at Reforger within the context of ARMA 3, it's clear that the developers were thinking, how can we make this game more accessible to everyone and not just PC players? And they absolutely succeeded on their mission. Now, ARMA 4 is due out in 2027 and it's building on Reforger's core. It'll be interesting to see what the next wave of ARMA can achieve. Now, when it comes to the most authentic modern military games around, Squad is up there on that list. This game was originally a spiritual successor to Project Reality, which was a Battlefield 2 mod that became incredibly popular. And since its official launch on Steam Early Access back in 2015, it's taken the Milsim genre by storm. In fact, up until Reforger released a couple years ago, Squad was basically the latest and greatest modern military shooter around. And even now, it's still holding its own against the slew of more recent titles that have popped up to challenge its crown. The main things that Squad does really well is it provides a super authentic feeling combat experience, wrapped up in some well-balanced and challenging modes that demand a high level of teamwork and communication. Every class has an important function to play with multiple layers of gear choices and teamwork actions to manage. This isn't a game where you just spawn and run in a direction of gunfire. You can do that if you want, but the real way to play is to group up with your squad, load up a truck of supplies, and drive it to a smart place on the map to build a forward operating base that the rest of your team can then spawn on, assuming that's your objective. Then you might spend some time getting into the action. This is a game for the patient FPS enthusiast that values map knowledge and tactics just as much as actually getting into the action and shooting at the enemies. You may go long stretches of a match just helping to fortify a base, but when you actually get into the action and then mortars start bombarding your base with helicopters flying overhead and tanks storming the front lines, few other games match the degree of realistic insanity. Squad has also built up a pretty impressive mod community. There's your typical World War II stuff, and then there's Starship Troopers mods. But one of my favorites is called Galactic Contention. It's a total conversion mod that turns it into a Star Wars game. Think Battlefront Battlefront, but with squad levels of scale. The immersion truly is next level, and it honestly feels like you're in one of these battles if these battles were taken seriously. In fact, in my opinion, it's one of the few games that brings this level of intensity to a Star Wars experience, and you kind of gotta try it if you enjoyed playing a Battlefront game. This is like Battlefront, but serious. Now, if you're looking to travel a bit further back in time, Hell Let Loose and Squad 44 are both excellent and highly authentic feeling World War II milsims. Hell Let Loose is brutally hardcore with massive maps, punishing weapon mechanics, and some smartly designed tactical choices. It might not be as strategically deep as ARMA or Squad, but it's basically the essential elements of those games distilled down to a more straightforward and still highly realistic experience. Similarly, Squad 44 essentially is just like a conversion of Squad for World War II with its own unique gameplay and modes. If you like Squad, Squad 44 feels right at home. It's great if you're looking for a game with a bit more structure when compared to Hell Let Loose. In my opinion, both of these games deserve attention for different reasons. Hell Let Loose is more of a run across an open field praying that there's no snipers on the enemy team looking for you type of game, where Squad 44 is more like Saving Private Ryan simulator, where one squad can make all the difference during a round, but you still have to play as a team, and sometimes that means defending a position that might not be as exciting as what one of the other squads is doing. Now, most milsims focus on large-scale maps and complex strategies. Insurgency Sandstorm, on the other hand, is much more of a small-scale tactical experience that I'm choosing to lump into the milsim category. Its core modes are limited to 28 players, and the maps are more similar in size to a traditional FPS game like Call of Duty or even some smaller Battlefield maps. But the big appeal of Sandstorm is that it provides you with realistic weapon handling and mechanics of milsims and puts them in an otherwise fairly typical PvP experience. It's easily the most accessible game on this list if you're looking for something that sort of bridges the gap between traditional FPS and hardcore milsim. Now, interestingly, one of the coolest appeals of Sandstorm is its PvP co-op modes. They're fantastic. In fact, a lot of players prefer them to the PvP experience. These modes pit a group of up to 8 players against a massive army of bots, and it's a ton of fun since you really have to focus and communicate and use teamwork to actually survive these missions. Veteran players will show you all the best camping spots where you can get the most work done without having to worry about getting absolutely flanked and blasted by overwhelming numbers. Sandstorm also features extensive modding support, and I've done a few videos about this looking at some of the basic mods as well as some of the VR mods that you can play in private matches against bots. In fact, playing this game in VR was genuinely one of the most immersive gaming experiences I've ever had. It's kind of insane just how much you can change this game with the mods. There's full-on custom maps that are so good the developers added them into the official map roster. There's also extensive weapon mods that add dozens of unique real-world weapons and additional mechanics like perks and new attachments. Now, Sandstorm is also available on console, but I think it's pretty limited when it comes to mod support. Now, if budget's a concern for you, Operation Harsh Doorstop is a free-to-play early access milsim title that's less of a specific type of game and more of a platform for players to build their own games with. It's being developed by YouTuber Blue Drake and his team, and their goal is basically to make a modern military FPS title with extensive mod support. So far, it's turned into something akin to Squad, just with a little bit less polish but more accessibility in many ways. It seems like it's got a pretty dedicated player base these days. Back when it launched, I was a little concerned that the lack of a cohesive direction might turn players away, but a lot of people have really embraced the game, and there's some major official updates on the way that should give modders some incredible new tools to work with. It still feels a little earlier in development when compared to some of its competition, but it is technically earlier in development. That said, it's hard to beat free, and with the extensive mod support for this game, I could easily see it blowing up into something much bigger. Now, the game Ground Branch is a bit of a different beast. It's like the mother of all PvE milsim experiences. It presents players with a variety of scenarios to play that are a hybrid of Insurgency Sandstorm's objective PvE experiences, but with insane depth and nuance of games like Ready or Not and old Rainbow Six games. You can fully kit out your weapons with incredibly granular attachments including optics, grips, lasers, plus you can arrange them and place them with total customization on your weapon. But beyond weapon customization, there's also soldier cosmetics and an absurd time of day selection system that lets you pick the time of year and the time of day down to the minute. Now, PvE does seem to be the star of the show, but the game also supports PvP, and honestly, I'm just scratching the surface of what Ground Branch offers. It's one of the most customizable co-op Milsim experiences that you can get today. Now, I wanted to mention a few titles here which I think deserve some recognition but might not fully fit into the Milsim category. Ready or Not is a fantastic building clearing experience that has a lot of Milsim-like mechanics. It's just not meant for big scale battles. I think of it more as like a SWAT sim or a tactical sim type game. Then there's extraction shooters that embody a lot of the Milsim stuff like Escape from Tarkov or Gray Zone Warfare, where they have all kinds of realistic bandaging and highly realistic weapon mechanics, but I don't put them in this category just because the focus on larger scale team play isn't really a major factor here. There's also 6 Days in Fallujah, which has a lot of focus on visual realism and co-op gameplay. The scale of it isn't quite as big as some of these other games, but it's kind of riding that gray line between Milsim and tactical shooter as well. Ultimately, the Milsim genre is a little tricky to define since it's sort of been evolving over the years, but if I had to pick one of my favorites right now, I would say ARMA Reforger. All of the games we looked at today I think are fantastic and worth checking out for their unique experiences and communities, but the reason why I like Reforger the best, at least right now, is it feels like someone looked at the entire Milsim genre and picked out the best parts, added in some impressive quality of life features, and kicked out an absolute gem of a game. It's engaged me the most recently, but it also caters to my interests, which is a game that's easy to get into but still has all the depth you might want from something bigger. Anyway, I hope this video gives you a good idea of the Milsim landscape right now. If you guys think there's some other games I should have included on this list, let me know in the comments and let me know why you think those games should make this list. If you enjoyed the video, leave me a like, subscribe for more content like it, and ding that notification bell to beat the YouTube algorithm with me. And up next, check out my video on ARMA Reforger if you want to see just why it's such a cool game. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.